yes, is joined by his little pet crow, Socrates, as we have a look at the Sideshow exclusive, the Sideshow Collectibles, Universal Studios, home of the original monsters, Frankenstein, the Silver Screen Edition, 12-inch figure. It's recommended for 12 and up, ages 12 and up, as it does have a choking hazard, small parts not for children under 3 years of age. Welcome back, Spot's doing more spooky spots during the month of Spottober. And we're going to be having a look at one of my favorite things that I just never got around to reviewing in previous years, the Boris Karloff Silver Screen Edition 12-inch figure. I kind of wish that Sideshow would go back to doing the 12-inch figures. We are, of course, getting things like Freddy Krueger finally. We're finally getting a Jason Voorhees. Maybe we can eventually get ourselves Universal Studios monsters again. The front of the box features the iconic Boris Karloff in one of his most memorable roles, of course, as Frankenstein's monster. It says on the front, Frankenstein. Let's not do this whole Frankenstein's monster debate versus Frankenstein. Let's just call it Frankenstein. It's Bride of Frankenstein. Let's just call it Frankenstein. So on the front, we've got a black and white picture there of Boris Karloff's Frankenstein. Spin around the side of the box. You've got Frankenstein, the Silver Screen Edition. And then on the back, an extensive read-up. Extensive. Let's read it now. The brilliant and erratic medical student Henry Frankenstein works in secret assembling a human body from parts of corpses stolen from graveyards on the outskirts of the Tyrolean Alps. He sends his hunchback assistant Fritz to his old medical school to retrieve a brain so he can complete the artificial man. At the school, Dr. Wallman has displayed 2 human brain specimens for his anatomy students. Fritz breaks in after his lecture and drops the jar containing the normal brain. He then grabs the other, not realizing it was removed from the body of a psychopathic killer. Of course, that's how these movies end. In the mountain laboratory, Henry is on the brink of madness. Starting an electrical apparatus, he sends the artificially conceived body to the rooftop where it is struck by lightning bolt. Endowed with life, the body descends back into the lab where Henry rejoices in triumph. "It's alive," is what he says. Henry's creation is more monster than man due to the abnormal brain stolen from Wallman's lecture hall. Fritz viciously taunts and intimidates the monster, and the monster slays him. On the eve of Henry's wedding, the monster crashes into his fiancée, Elizabeth's room, sending her into shock. Henry leads the search party into the mountains where he confronts his monster. Henry is quickly overpowered and dragged to an abandoned windmill. Villagers arrive on the scene and set the mill on fire. As the monster throws Henry's body to the ground, the windmill quickly becomes an inferno, pinning the monster under the falling rafters, where he is consumed by the flames, or so we would believe. Portrait sculpted by Olaf W. Hartvigsen. Figure and accessories designed by the Sideshow Toy figure team. Check out more cool stuff on the web at www.sideshowtoys. That's actually Sideshow Toy minus the s.com. And then lastly, just before we take our blood-curdling break, Socrates had to remind me that you can open up the box as well, showcasing what the figure was going to look like inside with all its accessories, showcasing also the cast and crew responsible for bringing this monster to life. Don't know why it sounded like a trumpet there. Spot's going to take a very terrifying break during the month of Spottober, during the month of spooky spots. Going to get the monster completely out of packaging, and when we come back, we're going to get a better look at the Sideshow Toys Frankenstein. Yes, Socrates, there's more coming your way. Don't go anywhere. Woo! And welcome back. We've got him out of packaging, still being joined by my crow. Let's have a look at the accessories that come included with Frankenstein, and then we'll have a look at the monster itself. He does come with a display stand. Not much of a display stand, granted. It's not a very large stand. In fact, we get a very small, almost the size of a soup cracker as a display stand. We've got a pebble stone flooring there with one just singular notch or curved, kind of looks like a horseshoe, where you can take Frankenstein's foot and sandwich it to the back. It just gives it enough of a standing posture. The only downside, though, is I find it slightly tips the creature. Like, it doesn't give him a proper footing overall. So in this case, it's almost a good example where you might not even want to use the display stand at all. He clearly stands well on his own. I don't think you don't need this at all. Frankie will also come with a pair of shackles, which have opening and closing latches there. As you can see, you can take the latches, the shackles themselves, and fit them around his hand. They do a good enough job of coming together, and with the articulation as it is in the figure itself, you can get both shackles on his hands perfectly fine. The coolest of the accessories, he comes with the abnormal brain. The abnormal brain comes in a little canister, comes also with a removable lid, and you can take the squishy brain out. Luckily it's not squishy, it's plastic. But there's the abnormal brain. Also black and white, the same as all the other features available, because this is the black and white release version of Frankie. Brain looks very cool. Looks pretty much like a brain. I mean, I don't have a physical one just yet. Working on that. But I don't have one I can actually compare one to. Can you imagine if I just said, and here's the physical one right here? Everybody would be like, anybody else want to know how Spot got his hands on a real, actual brain? No, we'll leave that for later reviews. But there's the brain itself. Fits very nicely, very snugly into the container there. And that's probably where I'm going to keep it. There is technically one more accessory that also comes with Frankenstein here, but unfortunately, I picked this guy up on eBay, and the seller, honestly enough, was nice enough to note in the description that one piece was missing. I think it's like an amulet or something like that was actually not part of the box. But it is, you can kind of see maybe in the opening end of it, there was something that was missing from the packaging. Yeah, that's the only thing that wasn't included with Frankie. Well, let's have a look at the figure itself. I have to admit, I love this figure. It's been in my collection for a while, and I just never got around to reviewing it because I knew sooner or later I would be doing it as a spooky Spot. I mean, this is not a figure that you would just do any day. You'd want to wait for special days, I think, to get a figure like this reviewed. Frankenstein is in black and white, so not only is his outfit black and white, his boots are a black and white tone, his jacket, but more importantly, his skin. Speaking of skin, here's his face. His face is good, although it could have been better. It could have been better. It bears some likeness to Karloff, but I don't think it's as perfect as perhaps what it could have potentially been. It has a very lifeless, I guess more calmer looking expression on his face. He does not have the angry look that he would be, look like in some aspects or some scenes of the movie itself. The bolts are still present on the sides of his neck. The sculpt on his hair is quite nice, I have to give it that, as well as some of this scarring on the underside there. It's a great looking figure. It could be granted a little bit better, but overall it's a pretty great looking figure. So let's talk about now his body. Now his body is a little on the skinny side. This is some of the problems that earlier Sideshow collectible figures had, that they used a very lanky body. Figures such as Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger, I think, have a tougher time using this style of body because the body is so small, especially Jason Voorhees. Big head, ultimately though a very small, narrow body. Frankenstein, it seems to work, I think, better. This style of body, the very lanky limbs and legs, especially in the arm area. Now they've done a good enough job of padding out the jacket that the jacket gives a little extra much needed size, because the body itself is really small. I think the jacket, there's quite a bit of padding that they put on the inside, especially around the shoulder pad area, that I think it fills out the figure just right. I really like the long arms that they've given him, and as you can probably see, let me roll up the sleeves here. You can see how the regular Sideshow body is underneath, and then they've simply just added the new sculpted arms over top. You're not going to see it anyways, because the jacket's going to be covering over it. A little scarring and how the arms have been patched together, sewn together, even on the wrists here as well. It's something that even to this day, I find like the old Universal Studios monster movies still hold up for their special effects, the makeup that they went with. Everything I think still looks decent. And yes, despite the fact he does have the lanky body, you can still get the gesture pose. I think most people always look at Frankenstein. They always think, oh, the arms up kind of thing. But you can recreate that. Although you got to be a little careful that the further the arms go up, the more exposed flesh body is underneath it. So while we're on the topic of articulation, Frankie here, Frankenstein's monster, does have a ball joint at the base of the neck. And then he does have a secondary ball joint attaching the head to the neck area. Shoulders hinge out, not so bad. And you can probably then see right there, that's where the body starts. It's right across this section right here. So moving the arms up does look a little disjointed from the rest of what would have, in your mindset, been the torso of Frankie. Arms still move back and forth. He has a rotation on the bicep area. He has a double bend elbow, and the thing you have to be careful of is knowing where that bend is. See, for example, this is actually a good example. See how the hinge is actually the wrong way. The arm should have actually gone this way to give you the double hinged elbow. So again, be very careful. You always, especially a figure, not only back then, but a figure nowadays too, when it's underneath fabric, you have to always know where that joint is actually sitting. He has an upper torso crunch. He has a rotation in the waist, forward and back motion on the legs, a swivel cut on the thigh, double hinge knee, and finally on his platform boots, he has a rotation going there as well. Myself and my inanimate pet here, Socrates, will both agree that Frankenstein is one of my favorite, or one of our favorite, Universal Studios monsters. There's just something about Frankenstein that I always go back to. I think of the Universal monsters, I think I prefer Frankenstein over Dracula. A lot of people like Dracula. I kind of go back, I think, more to Frankenstein than anything else. Sideshow, though a little more dated with these releases, still did a pretty good solid lineup. They did Dracula, Bela Lugosi Dracula. They did do, I believe, also Nosferatu, and they also did a Wolfman. They might have done a couple others as well. Some of them have color treatments to them. If you can get them, though, in the black and white treatment, I think that is all the more better. That it just screams more Universal Studios monsters when you have them in black and white over color. Today's spooktacular Spot was having a look with his crow, Socrates. We're having a look at the Sideshow toys, Sideshow Collectibles. This was the Universal Studios Boris Karloff Frankenstein. Stay tuned, guys. Spot's got more blood-curdling reviews coming to you this month of Spottober. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.